you're clearly intelligent, but yet you made a very dumb decision that then jeopardized the path or the direction you wanted to move forward on. Suits season 1, episode 1, pilot part 1 and 2. 80 minutes of pure impact, setting the scene, introducing the characters, and just bringing that Suits energy. Netflix, let's run it back. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Liv, living life with locks and learning lessons along the way. So firstly, it's set in New York, yeah. It is lights, skylines, all of that good vibe. And then the characters start rolling in. You got your Litt, you got your Jessica Pearson, you got your Harvey Specter, you got your Mike Ross, you got Trevor, Jenny, we'll get back to her, Miss Thing, Grammy, Donna Paulson, and then a Philip Hardman's in there. Now, in the series, in the episode, in the very first episode, I won't even say in the series because it's just in this episode from what I noticed, but we will see if I notice further references to this particular character further on in the episodes, in the season, in the series. But this Philip, it's a scene when Jessica is sitting down with this Philip, who is her predecessor for the law firm, which is called Pearson Hardman. Although Lewis only refers to it as Pearson when he's speaking to a client later on in the episode. I'm going to be jumping around back and forth, warning. And if you don't like spoilers because you haven't watched the series and you want to watch the series without any spoilers, then you need to go watch the episode and then come back to this episode, because this whole video segment on my channel is going to be spoilers, because I have watched Suits multiple times from beginning to end, and so therefore I'm going to say things that I know are going to come up and I'm going to be putting 2 and 2 together and everything like that, so just deal with it. So anyway, law firm, Pearson Hardman. Jessica's sitting down having a little tea party, little lunch or something with a guy called Philip. Now, I looked at this guy's face on the screen and I was like, okay, let me pause, because I have watched this series multiple times, but it's been out for years, and so therefore the eyes I watch it with this time is slightly different to the eyes I watched it with a few years ago. So I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, I recognize this actor, I recognize the actor, and I was like, I have to find out who this actor is or where I've seen him, because he bothers me. So in the scene, he's only referred to as Philip. So I pause, I go on Google, search Suits season 1, episode 1, Philip, and it's got him noted down as Philip Hardman. I was like, that's interesting, because Hardman, which we will get to at a later date, is another person is playing Hardman, and his first name isn't Philip, his name's Daniel. I think it's Daniel, I'll double check that. Anyway, so I'm like, okay, Philip Hardman, but it is a pilot, and sometimes the characters and storylines, I'm not saying people can't share the same last name, but sometimes the characters, storylines or whatever can change slightly between the pilot and when the series really gets going. So I click on this Philip Hardman and I see the actor's name. Can't remember the actor's name. I'm not mentioning actors' names in these videos. I'm sticking to the characters because it's the characters that I'm bringing to life, pulling the series apart and putting it back together like a jigsaw. I was like, okay, let me find out what else he's been in. So like, what's his filmography and what other TV series, television series has he been in? Scroll, and what do I come across? Power. So this guy, this so-called Philip Hardman in the pilot episode of Suits was Simon Stern in Power, and I could not stand that character in Power. So for me, this is how I watch things, or this is what happens to me. If I don't like someone in one thing I've seen them in, or if I have a strong feeling about them for the character they play in one thing, when I see their face somewhere else, it's really hard for me to have a different feeling. So in the moment, in the very recent moment, so before I recorded this video to share with you guys my analysis of this series, I had all those feelings rise up in me of Simon Stern from Power coming into this series with this character, completely different person, and I was just like, nah, no, I don't like your face because I remember you from over there. Then who else was also in there? because I'm kind of going in order in which they appeared. I got my notes. I need my notes because there was just 80 minutes. There was so much in this episode. The next character that I saw on the screen that was like a prominent character, because Philip Hardman wasn't, but obviously all the other ones, the lawyers I've mentioned, they are. Then Rachel Zane came in, and then another character appeared on the screen, and I was like, I recognize your face. Now, the character's name in Suits is called Vanessa. Vanessa is Harvey's private detective, and you hear her name a few times later on in the series. I think the actress stays the same, but regardless of that, pilot, this Vanessa, I'm looking at her face. They're in a bar, so it's kind of a bit dark, unlike Jessica and Philip, where they were out in the daylight, outside at his yard, I think, like by his mansion, his big fancy house, whatever, and they're outside sipping, talking, chatting, deciding, figuring out. So Vanessa and Harvey are in a bar, flirting, all that stuff, as Harvey does. And I'm looking at her face and I'm like, I recognize this character. Pause again. Go on to Google and I'm like, okay, Suits season 1, episode 1, Vanessa. I then see the actress's picture on my screen, and I was like, okay, she's ringing a bell. Look at the filmography. Hitch. So in Hitch, if you've watched the film Hitch with Will Smith and Eva Mendes, the girl that I saw, Vanessa from Suits, that's the character's name, Vanessa, is the same woman who plays Eva Mendes' friend Casey in the film Hitch. So this is the kind of stuff that I will be bringing to you in these videos, just like the way that my brain will watch something and it almost needs to sift through all the information I have stored as to where I've seen these faces before. That's just what happens. So anyway, these are things I picked up for the first time when I watched this episode again. Those are all of the characters that are kind of like most prominent in this pilot episode for Suits, and I thought it was kind of interesting because of this next point that I want to make about this first episode is about Jessica and Donna in particular, not so much Rachel, but Jessica and Donna in particular, because I've watched the series. I've watched Suits beginning to end multiple times, and there's 9 seasons. I've watched Suits, so I've seen how the characters are in the later parts of the series. So seeing them at the beginning again is really fascinating. And with Donna and Jessica, the thing that I noticed in this first episode is how basic their wardrobe and styling was. It needed to be that though. It needed to be very simple, very corporate. They've still got style, but they're not stylish. So they ain't got the ish yet. The ish is not fully kicked in until further seasons in. But that's all a part of like character development and everything like that. So I thought that was really like interesting watching it this time around, where I'm actually looking at the details of the characters and their profile and the way that they present themselves and the way that they are. So they still look fancy, but they're just not, there's a certain elegance and I don't know how to describe it, grace and kind of value that they portray further down the series. Particularly with Donna, we know that she goes through promotions and her position changes. She goes from being Harvey's PA to getting up there, part of the like senior team. Let's kind of summarize what the episode is about. That it introduces all the main characters, and the main storyline is that Mike Ross is someone who becomes Harvey Specter's associate. So Harvey Specter is a lawyer. Mike Ross becomes Harvey's associate to begin with, but he basically becomes a lawyer in a law firm without having gone to law school or passed the bar, and so therefore he's kind of doing something he shouldn't be doing. But the way that he does it, the way that they do it, because it's a team, I say Harvey and Mike are a team, the way that they do it, it almost like makes you feel like if he looks like a lawyer, sounds like a lawyer, acts like a lawyer, then he could be a lawyer, right? It's almost like if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck, right? So I think that's what's interesting about this whole storyline. It makes you feel like you should be on the side of Mike, even though he's doing something illegal. Mad. But if we we unpick it a bit more, what I also like about the opening episode and the series as it goes along, the way I looked at this episode this time around, I was able to see some things that you can kind of embed into your real life. And that's why I say that series sometimes, I like believing that the characters are real. I will literally watch these characters and talk to my screen and respond, react. And I love the writing, how it's written, because it really makes me have an emotion. Like I have a feeling, like I'm sad when they're sad, I'm happy when they're happy, I'm angry when they should be angry, or I'm like trying to defend characters even though they're not in that particular scene but they're being mentioned or talked about or whatever. And something that I really picked up between Harry, who's Harry? Harvey, the disrespect I just did to Harvey Specter, but Mike is to Harvey who Harvey is to Jessica. So within that trio, the things that I've been able to identify which are useful in real life, like in my actual life as Olivia, things around mentorship, leadership, self-belief, building your self-confidence, knowing who you are, knowing your limitations, knowing the limits of your own knowledge, and recognizing that you need to listen to those who know more or those who have experienced more, or feed from, so this is mentorship, I'd say, feeding from those who are where you want to be, but also recognizing things like people management, and especially when you're thinking of when you're at work and the different personalities, and especially a clash of personalities. I'd say Jessica's character in that opening episode showed both management and leadership skills very elegantly, because Litt, you go on a roller coaster with Litt. 1 minute you like him and then you don't like him, and then you like him and then you don't like him, and then he's really annoying, like a childish behavior in a grown-ass man, and then you like soften to him and you can understand him and you have compassion for him, especially when he starts doing therapy and all that kind of stuff. Again, spoilers. In terms of the people management that Jessica does, you see it most between Lewis and Harvey. Like you're trying to because she's clearly managing those two personalities, those two personas, which are very, very different. So Harvey kind of walks in and walks around very polished, suave, a bit up himself, cocky, arrogant, but it's all warranted. Like he's earned his stripes, I'd say. He's cheeky, he seems to be able to get away with things because he looks the part. So then there's this whole repeated mention of the value of your suit and how you wear your suit and the type of suit that you wear. And even in that first episode, Harvey recommends Mike to go to his suit guy, which gave me a bit of a Pretty Woman feel, because Mike walked into the store and was looking at the price tags and recognized that he couldn't afford it at that point. And so then he just walked straight out, and Harvey's like judging Mike based on the suit he's currently wearing in several scenes, but he still works with him. So then it's like that kind of back and forth of making an external judgment but still knowing the person and knowing that they still have value or worthy of being around, but also trying to teach Mike to present himself in a way where people don't draw a conclusion based on their first visual of you. So it's like Harvey in a way is kind of saying, I know you, so I can see past the suit, if that makes sense. I can see past the suit that you're currently wearing, but because I know you, I need you to dress better so that other people don't underestimate you based on how you look right now. And so then you've got Jessica, who has to kind of juggle those two, and she does that so well throughout the series. I mean, there are times when Jessica makes some decisions where I'm not a fan of like the decisions that she makes, but she has a way of doing it that makes you respect her as a leader. She's also trying to teach Harvey a lot, because I guess as a leader and a mentor specifically to Harvey, she knows what she wants for Harvey, or she knows what Harvey is capable of. But because Harvey's so close to things sometimes, including himself, he can't necessarily see like the end goal. So Jessica can see Harvey's full potential. And so she recognizes that Harvey isn't currently at his full potential. So she has to implement things as a mentor to get him to learn things so that he can reach his full potential. Because Harvey thinks he's just arrived. He thinks he's there. Again, I said, some of his behaviors, his mannerisms, his attitudes, it's warranted. He's built up a lot in his profile, but at the same time he's still got much to learn, and I think that's also something that was fascinating. This is all in the first episode, partially because I also know the series, so I know what happens, but I was able to see these little details a lot more now watching it for the 4th, 5th or 6th time. And it's like in this one episode, that's why I say it captivated me, because there were all these different textures and angles and perspectives and everything. Circle of influence. This is something that Harvey teaches Mike very early on, when Harvey tells Mike that he can no longer speak to Trevor. Trevor is Mike's longtime friend from school, from when they were children, from when they were young, who has been a bad influence on Mike. A decision Mike made based on Trevor's influence took Mike down a path that completely diverged or completely went in the opposite direction to where he could have gone. You see Mike's grandmother kind of make reference to this as well. And so Harvey was like, in order for you to take this next step in the right direction to where you really want to be, you've got to almost like let go of the things, the relationships, the people, the situations, the thought patterns, the behaviors that no longer serve you in your life over here, if this is where you really want to go. So that's also something that I really thought was like well embedded. And this is what I mean by being really selective about the things that I watch. It has to feed me. I have to feel like, yes, it's fiction. Yes, the characters are not real. The people are not real. They're actors, yes, but the people aren't real. The characters aren't real. The settings and the storylines aren't real, but they could be. Like, some of these things could happen in real life. And so I have to be able to see the value in a series in order for me to give it my time. And Suits is one of those series where I would give it my time over and over and over again. And it's like, I'm thinking of how some of the storylines and some of the exchanges and the interactions show up in my life, or how I can use the lessons that I've learned or can pick out from these episodes in my own life. And so those things were very key for me, like the self-belief one, the self-confidence one, the way Mike walks into that interview, which he did not plan to do, the way he walks into that interview and he's just like, I know who I am. And yet Harvey still showed Mike that there's parts of himself that he knew, but he didn't do anything about it in order to be better. You're clearly intelligent, but yet you made a very dumb decision that then jeopardized the path or the direction you wanted to move forward on. So, you know, it's all these little things. Like, it's like they hold a mirror up to each other in different ways. And this is another one I really liked. There was an exchange between Mike and Harvey whilst they were walking in the law firm. So Mike is doing a pro bono case, which Harvey passed on to him, which Jessica asked Harvey not to. Jessica said to Harvey he had to lead on the case, but Harvey kind of said, I'm more than pro bono, so therefore let me pass it on to my associate, my new associate. He didn't tell Jessica that, so he wanted to let Jessica be like, yeah, of course, like Harvey's doing that. I asked him to, so he's doing that. But Harvey then secretly passed it on to Mike. But anyway, Mike is doing all the running around on this pro bono case, and Mike shows that he really cares about people and what happens to them in their lives. And there was this exchange between Mike and Harvey where Mike was basically saying, so yeah, I really care about our client, and almost like trying to say that Harvey should as well. And Harvey was like, I care about winning. And what that made it sound like, from the surface, it seems like you can either care or you can win. You cannot do both. But when I really think about it, as someone who's watched the series, and so therefore I know how Harvey's character develops, and I know how Mike's character develops, and their relationship develops. I was like, because I wrote that down. I wrote down care versus win. Is that really a thing? Is it a one or the other? And what I would say is, it isn't. If you really listen to that exchange and you really think about it, it's not a case of Harvey saying he doesn't care because he wants to win. I think he was kind of subtly communicating or subconsciously doing it, because obviously it's not until later on in the series when he starts to become more vulnerable and opens up, and you know, you learn more about the man behind the image that is Harvey Specter, that he does care about people. But I think in this scene, he was kind of saying, like, you don't want to show people that you care too much if it's going to jeopardize you winning, because for Harvey, but by winning, that is him caring for his client. He's got to care enough in order to push for a win. But sometimes you have to strip out the personal and just stick to the facts and stick to the professional, stick to what can be done, stick to taking actions. Whereas Mike could easily get too caught up in the person and then lose sight of the strategy to win because he's distracted by how he feels in the situation rather than thinking through the steps to move forward towards a win. So Harvey does care, he just doesn't show how much he cares in the emotional space because he's focused on getting the desired result for his client. So therefore he does care. But what you learn about Harvey later on down the line, what he's experienced in his life is almost like the more he's cared, there's been some degree of loss, either loss of self or losing a family member, or losing a loved one, or losing the relationship or the connection, losing trust. So Harvey's lost a lot in his life journey. And so I think in order to reduce or stem the flow of loss, he almost has to show that he cares less than he actually does so that he can win for all, or for his client, or for the person, or whatever. And you see this with his relationship with Donna as well, because what's very interesting in this first episode, Harvey says the sentence, "That's why I love you," directly to Donna. So he's actually the first person out of him and Donna to express love for the other. Now, yes, you can say that he said it very passively, it was very jovial or whatever, but he still said it. Mike also, when he met Rachel Zane, because he showed up to the law firm on day one for his job to start his associate position and everything. And as Rachel's walking away, he mutters under his breath, or he says, "I love you." So both of them, Harvey and Mike, express love for the women that they end up with from day one, from that very first episode, which is what obviously these are things I picked up on before, but when I intentionally watch the episode to analyze it and pull it apart, you see these things and you hear these things on like a different vibration, which is very, very interesting. Something else I want to mention about the episode is the way the camera works, the way the camera moves, and it almost helps you understand Mike's brain a little bit more. Now, when you Google this, it will say that Mike's got a photographic memory. I wouldn't say it's photographic. I don't know what it is, but I wouldn't say it's photographic. I feel like I relate to him a little bit, but not necessarily exactly like him. Like, I wouldn't say my brain is as amazing as his is, where he's reading like 300+ page documents and he can tell you what was on this page, this paragraph, this sentence. I can't do that. But I'd say my recall is still pretty strong. But in this first episode, when Mike is in the hotel where he's meant to be doing the drop-off of the drugs to get the money, he's helping Trevor with making a deal, like getting that so that he can get the 25 grand in order to pay for his grandmother's care fees, which then makes him then stumble, or leads to him stumbling into Harvey's interviewing time slot, and being Rick Sorkin, who is not mentioned again until later on in the series. So Rick, you should have turned up to that interview, but if you did, we wouldn't have had this fabulous series called Suits. So anyway, Mike's memory allows him to, so he's very observant, let's say that. He's very observant, and what the camera does is you see everything that is then played back for Mike when he then needs to call upon that information. So for example, Mike is heading towards the hotel room where he's meant to be dropping off the drugs in order to help that side of the deal that Trevor's doing with him. He sees a couple of guys trying to get into a room, and he's picking up on the details that, okay, the bellhop or the guy who's trying to get into the room doesn't have gloves on, after remembering that a guy in the same uniform, or a person in the same uniform, earlier in his wanderings through the hotel was wearing gloves. So it's all these little details that you pick up on. So I actually rewound it a few times to see it. I was like, oh, we really did see what Mike then remembers, which I think is really cool. Now, that doesn't happen much throughout the rest of the series, but this is what I mean by that first episode is so important with setting the scene, introducing the characters, and getting you hooked. Because I was obviously hooked on that, because I'm thinking, okay, it's about, he literally sees everything, remembers everything, so that he can then call upon it when he needs it. That's why in a later part of the episode, Lewis is trying to catch Mike out and say that he was that Mike was graduated from the same class at Harvard Law as his cousin. Lewis actually said the name of his cousin. Mike was like, I don't recognize them. There's a lot of people in the year. And then Lewis was like, not really. And then Mike remembers when he was in the office at Harvard Law School to learn everything about being at Harvard Law School, to kind of add believable details to the lie. Because remember, it's a lie. Mike didn't go to law school, didn't pass the bar. He's not legally allowed to practice law as a lawyer. But here he is as Harvey's associate. Mike then has a flashback and remembers seeing the top 10 graduates for that year. And Lewis's cousin is on there, and that's when Mike remembers and says a bit more to kind of let Lewis feel convinced that it all adds up. So it's kind of interesting. It is kind of interesting to watch an episode and know what's going to happen and how storylines are going to unfold, but at the same time still see new things. So obviously all this stuff I've seen before, like it's past my eyes, but there were still things that I picked up on for the first time when I watched this episode for like the 5th time. This is probably what I will finish up on. Obviously, with it being a law drama, a law series, there's so many clients that are referenced, and it's very much like when I watch Grey's Anatomy, there's so much medical terminology that is referenced. So in this law series, in Suits, there's so many different cases that are happening at the same time. There's so much legal information and legalese in it, but it's done in a way that is tangible to people who are not familiar with law. So what I actually want to do, something, a kind of goal that I'm setting for myself this time, or for these like videos that I'm doing of commentary on each of the episodes for this series, is I want to take a note of and track the cases that are referenced. So I'll probably bypass the pilot episode ones, because as I mentioned about Philip Hardman earlier, Philip Hardman becomes Daniel Hardman, and it becomes a different person and almost a different personality moving forward, unless they are just two men with the same surname, coincidentally. With the clients, I want to be able to track their mention so that I can better understand the different angles, because it can get quite confusing at times. I mean, it's fine for me now because I've watched it several times, but you're so focused on the primary characters like Jessica, like Harvey, like Mike, like Rachel, like Donna. You're so focused on them that sometimes you can actually not be that engaged with all the secondary and tertiary characters, like the clients, like their clients, the clients of the law firm. And so it'd be interesting to understand those a bit more, because there are several moments when the clients actually take the main character's development or journey in a different direction. Like the clients impact the main characters, so the tertiary characters and the secondary characters impact the main characters, the primary characters. And so I think that's what I'm going to set as a target for myself watching it this time, is like, as well as the camera angles and the music and the scene setting and picking up on the seeds that are planted early on that kind of germinate throughout the series, I also want to listen more to those extras, the extra people on set that either have lines, don't have lines. And that's why I was able to think about Vanessa, Harvey's private detective, and being like, oh, I've seen her face somewhere else. I think I'm going to think about those characters more. But this has been quite an interesting start to the Suits series. So if you want more, then like, comment and subscribe. And let me know if there's a series that you've watched that you rewatch. That'll be interesting to know. And if you've watched Suits, let me know where you're at in Suits. If you've watched it before, if this is your first time, or what things did I say did you spot, or what things did I say had you never seen before, never thought of before. And let's talk about it. Let's have a bit of a Suits discussion in the comments. There will be a minimum of 136 videos from me about Suits, because I really want to do a video per episode, but we'll see. Thank you for watching another video on Must Watch Gotta Learn. You can find more commentary for Suits season 1 on my channel, and if you want to be the first to watch any new season or series, then subscribe to my channel. On Must Watch Gotta Learn, we turn our favorite fictional TV series into real life lessons. It has never been more fun to binge watch a rerun.